Acknowledging where you're seeing fear show up and be unhelpful in your life is important.
I think it's easy to let that fear fully encapsulate the actions that we're taking in life. I personally don't want my life to be motivated by fear. Hello and welcome to Full Circle, the Magic Mindset Podcast. I'm Matt, one of your hosts, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Lea Lily. We aim to bridge the gap between my study of psychology, sociology, and organizational communications. It's really nice to get to fit all those in sometimes, and Lea's study of astrology. Each week, we discuss a specific theme, and we approach it from two different perspectives in order to come to a deeper understanding from both the astrological and psychological perspective.
If you missed out on any of our previous episodes, you can catch up at lealily.com/fullcirclepodcast or on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube by searching for Full Circle Podcast.
Lea, it is time for the 30 minutes and 30 seconds segment where we play a little game to summarize the previous episode in exactly, not more, not less, exactly 30 seconds. Are you ready to go?
I was born ready.
Okay, I don't believe you, but I will count you down. 3, 2, 1.
Fear plays out on both an individual and global scale, and it's important to know what you are individually fearful of and how that contributes to the collective. So where can you look through an astrological lens to understand your personal fear and where it comes from? Saturn. Saturn is going to indicate where your natural limits, restrictions, fears, and boundaries are. And if you want to crush some of those fears, you can look to your Mars placement for the ways in which you can use your natural strengths to combat some of your unrealistic fears that are sabotaging, not serving you.
Gotta be honest, it's a little more than 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, you were a little more than 30 seconds last week, but I didn't say anything.
Disagree. We'll have to check the tape. All right, I am ready to go too.
Are you? Are you going to get it in 30 seconds?
Absolutely. I do every week, which is why I disagree with you that I was wrong last week. Here we go. You count me down.
3, 2, 1, go.
Fear comes from a couple different places. Could be instinct, could be learned, or it could be taught. Fear originates in the amygdala, which is the key emotion processing center of the brain, and it triggers a bunch of nervous responses in your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight. I forgot when I started this, so I'm hoping I'm coming up on 30 seconds, but there's a way that we solve it through medication. We can solve it through therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy or systematic desensitization. And you can also do it through journaling, things like religion, etc.
Over 30 seconds as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 35 seconds, but I think yours was 37, so I'm going to chalk that one up as a W. Here we go.
You're such a mess. I hate you. I'm always interested to see what people have to say as far as their childhood fears, and we got some really interesting responses this week from the listeners as far as what they were afraid of when they were children.
To me, it's interesting where there is kind of this split between things that are like, those are rational fears. Those are things that maybe you probably should be afraid of, versus some things maybe on the other end of the spectrum that seem a little bit, I don't want to say sillier, because I appreciate that, people felt comfortable sharing these things with us, but they are more childlike fears, right? Like, we got things like aliens, fear of closets was one, and like open windows. I guess at night still is kind of reasonable, but some of the other like rational fears are like, I'm afraid of bees or sharks. We had a couple just in general aquatic animals, sharks, alligators, and hippos. So like those make maybe a little bit more sense to me. Whereas like on the other side with like the aliens and things, I'm like, well, makes sense as like a child, but maybe not so much now to me.
I think as a child too, you have just such a vivid imagination that a lot of the things that you can imagine are scarier to you because you're just able to think a little bit more vividly. Whereas when you're an adult, you start to become afraid of more practical things, it almost seems like.
Are you telling me that Jim Carrey wasn't actually out to get me?
I might have just shattered your whole fear illusion.
It's okay. Nefer already took care of it. But one that came up, I'm curious if you even know what it is. I consider myself pretty well versed in the internet. Blue Fireman? Do you know what that is?
I don't. I just tried to look at it again from that kid imagination perspective of maybe just this guy that is so fiery. He's like the blue fire. He's so hot and terrifying that I might be developing a fear of blue fireman right now, actually, thinking about it.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do some research and maybe reach out to the person who shared it. And hopefully it's able to make an appearance in the show notes because I'm interested in it, but I couldn't find any information about it when we were researching for the show. So, what do you think is the scariest thing you've ever read on the internet?
I think stuff about Slender Man, that really freaked me out.
Slender Man gotcha.
Yeah. There was even a
I don't
game
think.
too. I don't even know how we found it. I don't even know. It probably still exists. You could probably Google like Slender Man game and find it, but you like walk around with a flashlight and try not to shine it on Slender Man. And I just remember playing that at night around Halloween time with my friends, and it was scary. It scared me.
The scariest thing that I have ever read on the internet that like actually when I get scared reading something, my eyes water and everybody's gonna say, you cry? It's like, no, I actually am not crying. It is just my eyes water. That's how I know when I'm afraid. And I read about it's the goat man, which sounds ridiculous, but it's like this Native American myth, I think. It's kind of like a Wendigo, where basically like these kids go to this cabin and just all of a sudden they realize that there's just another kid there with them and nobody even took note of the fact that it was there. And they start to hear like there's some sound that's associated with Goat Man. I don't remember the whole thing. It's very creepy, but it's an excellent read. And that's the scariest thing I've ever read on the internet.
The internet is a scary, scary place. Oh, you know what else is a scary place? WebMD.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
I would
like
agree.
nothing will convince you you're gonna die like the internet.
I do remember one time I was sitting up, it was late at night, and I was on the computer playing games, and I had this pain in my side. And I started to get worried that it was appendicitis. So I looked it up on WebMD and I was like, oh, it probably is appendicitis. And then I went to bed and I told my parents the next day, like, oh, I was pretty sure I had appendicitis. And they were like, first of all, you definitely didn't have appendicitis. Second of all, if you really believed that you had appendicitis, why did you not wake somebody up and go to the hospital?
We are in the midst of Scorpio season. I hope everyone had a mystical and magical Halloween and that Mercury in retrograde is treating you well. If you need a little more guidance around this Mercury in retrograde, you can check out our show notes for more details about what to expect. The quality of Scorpio that I want to explore today is depth. The deep and dark are both ruled by Scorpio, and both get called up as we make our way through this season. Things unexplained or unclear ask us to do some exploring and uncovering. It's time to solve some mysteries in your life and dive into what may be hiding within you. This could be feelings you've been holding in or glossing over, or truths that you've been avoiding. It's time to speak the unspoken and share what's really going on for you and how you're really feeling. Keep checking in with yourself and where you are. Honesty is key to assessing your current situation and place in life. Research and any and everything that allows us to go deep into something is also calling right now. So find a new area of study or something that interests you and dive in. Use this time to focus and learn all that you can about something specific.
This week's featured business is Living Earthy.
Owner Kendall is an intuitive transformation coach, energy healer, and herbalist. She's on a mission to help people reconnect to the earth and their souls to bring greater collective expansion. She provides immersive experiences that support spiritual or woo-curious women to get unstuck, step into confidence and clarity, and create momentum toward the impact they wish to have in the world.
She also makes handmade herbal remedies, including tea blends, essential oil blends, and facial steams, as well as abalone jewelry.
If you want to check her out or learn more about Kendall's services, you can find her at www.livingearthy.com or through the links in our show notes.
I thought it would be really fun for us to spend this portion of the podcast really talking through some of our fears. And I think that we've shared those at least a little bit already, and maybe we can take a more serious approach to it at the end of this segment. But I thought it might be fun if I just hit you with a couple, and you tell me which one you are more afraid of and why, and then I can do the same. Does that sound okay?
Sounds like fun.
So first one, I tried to pick, at least to start with, like some real fears that people actually have. And then we'll get into maybe some goofy ones before we get into some serious ones that you and I actually have. So first one, fear of blood or fear of water? Which one hits you more?
Whoa, right out of the gate with some blood. I could deal with water, like pool of water on the ground. That's fine. Pool of blood on the ground. That's not fine. What about you?
I think if I had to pick one, I would probably pick fear of blood. When I was in school, I was like considering being a doctor and becoming a psychiatrist, where you have to like go to med school and stuff. And I was like, I can't do it because I can't draw blood. But I think that's more the fear of needles for me. But I am a little bit worried about water. Like water makes me uncomfortable. I'm not a strong swimmer. So I think I would still pick blood though. No, I'm going to flip. I'm going fear of water. I'm more afraid of needles than blood. I'm going to go fear of water.
That mystifies me that you are not a strong swimmer. I can't believe that.
It wasn't really part of my life growing. Like we went to public pools and stuff, but okay, this is more detail than I expected to get into for this section. But I think the reason I'm not a strong swimmer is because when I was growing up, I had a lot of ear surgeries. And it's why I can't hear out of one of my ears is all those surgeries. But because of that, when I was a child, I had to be very careful with my ear. I couldn't get water in it or else it would make me sick. And so I wasn't swimming a lot. I had like earplugs that I could wear and that was fine. I was also really afraid of jumping off the diving board and they wouldn't let me take more swim lessons until I could jump off the diving board. So those are the two reasons that I'm not a strong swimmer. And that's why I think I'm afraid of water now. Those two are hemophobia and hydrophobia for what it's worth. Next one, more afraid of heights or flying?
Like flying in a plane or I have wings? What's the deal?
Well, Leah, do you actually have wings? Or would you be more likely to find yourself in a plane?
I mean, I don't use my wings a lot because people would judge me.
You're a precious angel. Let's pretend for a second that it's planes.
Great. Okay. That just puts it into context. I guess I would say heights.
Because
being in a plane doesn't bother me as much as it used to. I used to be very afraid of flying. But I think once I just like released, like I have no control over any of this process and I'm choosing to be on a plane. So like choose to be on the plane and kind of got in a different mindset with that. When I find myself like in a tall building or something like that, yeah, that does give me a little shortness of breath. I think just being that high off the ground feels a little unnatural to me. And maybe it has something to do with the fact that I'm an air sign, or an earth sign. I feel very rooted to
Yeah.
the earth. But yeah, being
You need to
being
be
up high
closer to
freaks
the
me out.
ground.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between like being so high up in the air that it's like this is almost unfathomable versus, oh, I can like see the ground and calculate the distance from like my body to the ground, and like that starts to kick off all of these like, oh my god, responses in my brain.
Interesting. Asking these questions, I don't think I'm afraid of a lot of things, but I realize that some of these things actually do give me like a small amount of anxiety because since I came here, I moved internationally, right? I live like 700 feet off the ground, which is like kind of crazy to me. I never thought I'd be in a big city living in a big building. And I do I do get a little bit worried that, well, the building's going to fall over, which I don't think the building's going to fall over, but I think about it sometimes. And with flying, I fly a lot for work, and I do this thing which is irrational. But when we're taking off or landing, I think about like, okay, at this point, if something terrible happened and we crashed, I think we'd be okay. And I think I'm totally wrong. I think if you crash in a plane, like it's a pretty bad deal no matter how far off the ground you are. But like in my head, those are the ways that I rationalize it. I'm like, well, now we'd be okay. And that's what I think about. But I think if I had to pick one, I'd say I am more afraid of heights than flying, although I don't think I'm actually afraid of either one.
I agree. I feel that way too.
Those are acrophobia for fear of heights and aerophobia for fear of flying. Next one, are you more afraid of being in like a small closed off place or being in like a wide open public place, maybe with like a lot of people?
Or a small space alone.
Yeah.
That's hard. I think it used to be I felt comfortable in big wide open spaces. I think if it's a big wide open nature space, I feel good, but if it's a big wide open public space, I don't like it. I don't know if I like either of those. I feel like this is hard. I guess I would
It's
have to
supposed to be hard. Which one's worse?
the big open public space is worse for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think for me, if the small space is like comfortable, I'm probably okay. But like if I'm like scrunched up in a box and like not feeling comfortable, maybe not so much. But I think in general, it makes me a little bit anxious, more so to be in like a crowd of people in like a public place. But I do better when I'm by myself. Like when I'm walking with people and we're like spread out, it gives me anxiety to be like, okay, we're in the way. Can we please like let's go 2 by 2 instead of like doing a line, things like that. So I think I will also pick the crowded public place, which is agoraphobia, over the small closed off place, which is, of course, claustrophobia. So this one's a little ridiculous. Are you more afraid of dogs or cats? And I think I know the answer.
Dogs.
More afraid of dogs. Why more afraid of dogs?
Well, if I had to pick one, because dogs could do more vicious damage if they were, I don't know, provoked or, angry.
Just because
Whereas,
they're bigger.
yeah, bigger and teethier.
Teethier? I don't know. Cats have some pretty sharp teeth.
They do, but like a cat bite is probably going to hurt real bad, but like a dog bite and then maybe rip some of your flesh off. I don't know. This is very. I'm in the spirit of Halloween. Forgive me.
You're good. So more afraid of dogs, but you're not like afraid of dogs.
Correct. What about you?
It's a common fear though, I think, to be afraid of dogs. I haven't heard it as much for cats, but to be afraid of dogs, I think is common. I think if I had to pick one, I'm like not at all afraid of either one. I think like if I see a cat, I'm not worried about it. But if I saw like a stray dog or something that was like acting kind of crazy, I'd be more afraid of a crazy dog than a crazy cat, I think. So I think I'd pick dogs. But I think if it's a normal dog and a normal cat, I'm more afraid of the normal cat. Because they don't care. They'll just get you just because they feel like it.
Nah, they have a reason.
Well, the fear of dogs is cynophobia, and the fear of cats is allurophobia. Are you more afraid? This is the last goofy one I'll ask, and then I'll ask a real one. Are you more afraid of the figure eight or ferns?
Like, I can't, these are
You're not
just
gonna do
getting
it?
more and more ridiculous. That's even more ridiculous than the last one.
I'm gonna choose that I am more afraid of the figure eight because I remember fondly a sensitive fern that a friend got me a while ago, and sensitive ferns are so cute because if you touch their little fronds, they just close up. They're so shy. So I'm going to say I'm more afraid of the figure eight, which is octophobia, than I am of ferns, which is pteridophobia. Let's jump to a real one that I think that you'll actually have an answer for, and maybe we can have a real conversation about. Are you more afraid of success or failure?
I think success.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's so easy to fall back on things not working. Like, it's just so easy to be like, oh, like, this is why it's just not working. This is why it'll never work. This is why I'm not where I need to be, because getting wherever it is, if you even get there, arriving at that just seems like such a foreign concept. Like, what would it feel like to not want for anything or need anything else?
Are you more afraid of like succeeding and realizing that it's not everything you thought it was going to be? Or are you saying that like being afraid of success is like with failure there are reasons and you can say like, oh, it didn't work because of this. You can't be disappointed in what you attained because it didn't work the way you thought it was going to. Is it more success not being what you thought it was going to be, or saying like failure, like I can reason why this thing failed?
I think it's both. I think it's like a vicious cycle. But it's so funny to even say it, right? You say, okay, yeah, I'm afraid of being successful, and then it's like, well, why? It's like, well, anything I say is just gonna sound silly, really, because if you don't even feel like you're worthy of success, if you don't even feel like you could get there and not be freaking out, what says you even deserve that?
Do you think part of that, though, is the definition of success? I think people look at success very differently. And I think in some ways, success can feel like an end goal when really, I think this is going to sound really cheesy, but it is more of the journey. Like you have a successful journey, not a successful arrival. And I think when we think of it as an arrival, it becomes a lot scarier because it's like, well, what if I decided in middle school that this is what I wanted to do with my life, and every decision I made through middle school, high school, college, graduate school, doctoral programs, any of that kind of stuff was leading me here, and I get here and oh man, I don't like it as much as I thought I would. That to me is a very rational way to approach the fear of success. But I think if you look at it more as the journey, and it's like, well, look at all these things that I learned, all of these people that I met. I know that for me, I worried that I didn't try hard enough in high school. And I was worried about the college that I went to. I was like, well, all my friends went to this prestigious state school, and here I am at this private university that's in my hometown. And I worried, like, well, this school doesn't have as much prestige. And what if I can't get the jobs that I want? And I think it was probably the best place for me to end up. It was smaller classes, which gave me attention that I needed and made me try. I met some of the most important people in my life at that school. When I look at it more as the journey and less like, well, did it get me the jobs that I wanted? Approaching it from that direction makes success feel a lot different and makes it like a much less intimidating thing.
Yeah, and I think that's been a really big part of some of the process that I've been going through this year is sort of rewriting the story of my journey to this point, because I think I have been looking back at it and seeing it as, and a friend even mentioned this to me this week, as sort of like negative experiences that I had been through that, yes, put me where I am now, but still kind of casting this maybe more judgmental light over them to say, no, that wasn't it. No, I failed in these ways. It wasn't successful. Like, I went to acting school and I got a degree in it, but I didn't ultimately follow that career path, and seeing that as a failure in certain ways. And I think I'm having to relook at a lot of things like that in my past to not continue to tell myself the story that I've failed and that I failed at a lot of different things. But it has called forward for me a little bit more of a need to find something and kind of stick in it and see something through to the end. And I think that's where we kind of get caught up, is like, where can we have different experiences and, like you said, like, let it all be part of our journey, versus, when we get that destination in mind and decide the route in which we're going to take to get it and go after it, and if something blocks that path, then it's sort of a failure. So how do you marry those two things, I think, to let it be a little bit more of a journey, like you were saying, to success rather than an end goal of success?
I think so. Two of the mantras that I try, at least, to live my life by, they come up most often. One of them is perception is reality. And if you perceive the things that you have done on your journey as a series of, in your words, negative experiences, things that you have done that have not worked correctly, it only makes sense that that manifests now as like, oh, I feel like I have not been successful. But I think if you reframe those things, and framing is a very important psychological concept, framing changes the way that we think of things. And it is, look at all the good things that happened, right? I think this is true for a lot of people. So hopefully some of these things are able to resonate with those people as well. But you went to school. A lot of people don't graduate college, but you did. You have all of these amazing skills that a theater program taught you that I think other programs wouldn't teach. I know the gen ed, one of the gen ed requirements for my degree was you had to take a 3 credit hour course on public speaking. And it was the hardest thing that some people had to do. Well, your whole degree program was public speaking, and you're comfortable doing it now. And it's one of those skills that it'll help you no matter what you decide to do. And so I think if you start to look at those things in a more positive way, and maybe you have a job that doesn't bring you a lot of joy. I know I've had those jobs, and friends of mine have had those jobs, and I'm sure that listeners to the podcast have those jobs. And framing it more as, what did I gain from this experience? What are the things that I learned, and how can I apply that to my journey moving forward? As opposed to saying like, well, what a waste of 2 years. What a waste of a year. What a waste of 5 years, 15 years. Like, what did I gain from this? Nothing. Well, with that kind of approach, yeah, you didn't gain anything. But if you look back and say, I learned that, organization is more important for me than I thought it was. And I need to really make sure that in my next position, I'm more organized. Or, maybe I struggled with networking. Or maybe I was too hard on myself, or too honest with myself, or not honest enough. Like, all of these different things are lessons that we can learn and apply moving forward that help us be successful and make that success a journey instead of an arrival. And then we don't have to be afraid of it anymore.
And as we're talking about this, want to challenge myself and also anybody who's listening maybe this week to take one of the experiences that you feel maybe very negatively about or feel like you failed in, and write out what did you learn? What can you take away from it on the opposite end of that? And it's something also really powerful, I think, to do during Scorpio season, as we look for the truth in some of these dark, mysterious situations that we feel like maybe there was nothing there. So I think that reframe is extremely important, and just reminds me that there's some reframing that even in my own life and my own past that I, have to do in order to set myself straight back on the journey rather than this end goal success. And one of the things that my mom, who's a consultant, teaches is having your own definition of success. And she teaches this to executives, which, I mean, even in the corporate level, it's very important to have set what your personal definition of success is, both in your personal life and in your work life, and having those two separate ones. And I think it's time I pulled mine out and looked at what I have written down, and if that still resonates with me, and if not, reorienting a little bit, because that's the other thing too that I don't think we talk about a lot, is that your definition of success can change, and that it is different from somebody else's, and that it doesn't have to be the mainstream definition that maybe our generation has kind of been sold of, get a corporate job and a house and a car. Like, if those things aren't important to you, they're not, but you do need to identify what is, so that you're able to kind of orient yourself toward that and feel successful every day. It's important. And I think lately I've been like swimming in kind of like feeling just like unsuccessful in a lot of different ways and in a lot of different things in my life right now. And it's going to be really important to kind of set myself straight and pull some of those things out again and look at them.
So to quickly wrap up this particular section, I don't think fear of success is like an officially recognized phobia, but it is colloquially called achievemophobia. And I'll be perfectly honest, I am afraid of failing at pronouncing this name. I think it's a tychophobia, could be like tychophobia for the fear of failure. And just like the really quick last statement that we don't have to spend a lot of time talking about, I think for me, I would be more afraid of failure than success. And I think it's largely because I've been very fortunate to have the opportunities in my life that set me up for success. And so I feel like I want to attain those things, whatever they may be, so that I don't waste that opportunity that I had.
So after all of our talk about fear, after understanding it at a psychological, astrological level, after going through some of our own personal fears, what are you taking away from these 2 episodes that we've done around fear?
I think this takeaway for me is very similar to at least a partial takeaway that I've had for most of our episodes thus far. And to me, it's more just being mindful and understanding what that fear is motivating. We talked about the sympathetic nervous system and that fight or flight response. And I think it's easy to just react to something that you're afraid of. And I'm not talking about like the spiders and snakes. I'm talking more the success and failure that we talked about, where understanding what's motivating the behavior is the important part for me. And if I'm being motivated by fear, I want to take a step back, analyze that fear, figure out what bits are rational and what bits are irrational, and toss those irrational things aside so that I can focus on the rational thought and move forward in a way that makes sense. I think it's easy to let that fear fully encapsulate the actions that we're taking in life. I personally don't want my life to be motivated by fear. So understanding what that fear is causing me to do, and then hopefully nipping that in the bud and moving forward in a way that doesn't let that fear through in inappropriate ways. What about you?
I think fear as a primal response is meant to keep us safe, but we need to notice the places in our life where it is hindering us and sabotaging us rather than doing us a service. So that can be a big thing to take on. And it does require a level of mindfulness that is sometimes uncomfortable. But acknowledging where you're seeing fear show up and be unhelpful in your life is important. And it is a practice. And sometimes it's a mindset shift. Sometimes it's a, physical practice, like you mentioned, of fear of flying, watching videos, going to the airport. It's a step by step, whatever it may be, but it's important to acknowledge that and know where it comes from, and can be even more helpful to acknowledge that at an astrological level too, just to see what you're naturally working with and choose the way that you would like to move forward so that you're not leading a life led by fear. Are you ready for some tarot?
Wow, that was not expected.
Yeah, well, I'm real excited about our tarot card this week, which is the Two of Swords. And the Two of Swords represents inner conflict. So there's some conflict going on between the head and the heart, or two different ideas or things that you're trying to decide between. And right now you're able to sort of entertain these two possibilities or maintain kind of this head and heart conversation that's going on, but it's not sustainable. So a decision is coming up. A decision needs to be made. And know that there are no wrong choices, but you do need to make a choice. So it's time to pause, take inventory, and then decide which path you're going to take. And also know that not making a choice is making a choice. So decisions.
As I have done with the last couple of psychological wellness tips, I like to pick a very specific phrase from the tarot reading and apply it to the wellness tip. So today we are going to focus on head and heart. I think one of the things that we don't give enough credit is the impact that our mental state has on our physical well-being. One of the things that I'm going to focus on today before transitioning to the wellness tip itself is that there is a proven correlation between your mental state, whether that be some form of depression or anxiety, and an increased likelihood of heart disease or stroke. It also works vice versa. If you have heart disease or stroke, it can cause anxiety or depression. And it's important to handle these things in a healthy way. So the wellness tip is to let your doctor help you. The holistic approach to medicine is taking a full picture of you as a person and treating that full system instead of just treating specific symptoms that you're experiencing. So when your doctor, your general practitioner, sees you for your regular checkup, they're going to ask you the questions about, have you had any pain, any medications you're taking, all that kind of stuff, but they might not ask you about your mental health. I think that in general, doctors are getting better at taking that holistic approach, but it's important that you share the way that you are feeling about your mental health with your general practitioner. They're going to be able to do things for you to help you make sure that your mind is in tip-top shape, just the way they make sure that your body is in tip-top shape.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Full Circle, the Magic Mindset Podcast. If you want to learn more about us or hear previous episodes, you can visit lealily.com/fullcirclepodcast. There you can find previous episodes and also our show notes, where we include previous tarot polls, links, and more extras from each of our episodes. You can also engage with us on Twitter at @fullcircle_pod. And we also have a community on Facebook under Full Circle, the Magic Mindset Podcast, where we hope to communicate and talk with you. You can share your insights, your thoughts on our themes, and more in that community. If you want to listen to more of our episodes, we are on Spotify and iTunes, and also on my website. We release new episodes every Monday. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.